Hi, welcome to Diving into Deep Waters. I am your host, Erin Rowling, and this podcast may be a little deep. Yeah, we'll go with deep. I don't know if that's actually the right word, but it's going to maybe get a little heavy, a little emotional, but to start off, we won't dive right into the depth. We'll wade our toes for just a few seconds and just share something a little bit light to get it started. It's kind of funny because we went to go see my mom, and our second daughter, Liz, came home to stay with Abby. And it's just funny because I think as your kids age, they take on more of this motherly role to their siblings. Some of them maybe have it from a very young age. I think Liz has always been very much keeping tabs on everyone, felt this responsibility kind of thing with our kids. And it's just kind of played out in a very motherly role with her coming home. And it was kind of funny because I was like giving her the rundown of everything. And I was like, she was looking at her schedule, her work schedule. She was like, well, I'm not going to be able to pick up Abby from school. And Abby was like, well, I need a ride home from school. And Liz is like, I don't see what the big deal is. Just walk. And Abby's like, I can't walk. It's freezing out. And she's like, I don't see what the big deal is. Just walk. She's like, Mom, she can walk. And Abby's like, I can't walk. And I'm like, I'll find her a ride. It's not a big deal. And Liz is like, I don't understand why she needs a ride. Why can't she just walk? I walked. Joseph walked. Why can't Abby walk? Just no leniency at all. And I did find a ride. Thank you, Josie, for giving her a ride. But it was just funny because another thing was my friend was doing coffee bar and she said the girls were talking and Abby was like, yeah, we didn't go out to dinner one time. Mom left us money and we didn't go out to dinner one time. And Liz was like, there was food in the house to eat. Why do we need to go out? And like the things that were okay when they were younger, although Liz has always been incredibly independent, but when she's looking at her 16-year-old sister, she's like, what is the big deal? Why can't you just do these things? It's not a real big deal. It was kind of funny because at one point, Paul was talking to Liz about her leaving. I was like, did she get a ride to youth group? And Liz was like, I don't know. We're not speaking right now. I was like, okay, that makes me feel great. So yeah, siblings as they age, all the fun things of having kids and siblings. And yeah, so if you have kids and you have multiples, then you get it, how the sibling relationships work. Some kids have more grace for some siblings than others. That's just how it goes. So I just thought I would I'm sure you can understand. Or maybe you and your sibling. I don't know. So, okay, I guess I can't skirt around the hard stuff forever. I'll be honest, this is probably going to be an emotional podcast for me. I have my Kleenex ready. I've had this podcast on my heart for quite some time. I knew that I was going to do it at some point. I was going to do it about 2 weeks ago, and with all the events that happened and transpired, because that's what life does. It throws things at us. Things come out of the blue. We're not anticipating it. And, but now I'm like, okay, I'm back. I need to do this. But I debated about it. So because it's personal, it hits very close to home. And it might even seem a little bit morbid, if I'm being honest. But I don't want to be morbid, but, life is not always flowers and sunshine and rainbows and candy. That's just not how life is. A good portion of life is not like that. So I think just to focus on, positive things, but I feel like here at Diving into Deep Waters, we are willing to get into the deep stuff. And that is the name of this podcast. And for me not to go into the deep of what maybe where my life is right now, I don't think would be being honest with you guys. Not that I want to. If I'm being completely honest, I would much rather do a lighter topic or something that's just more pleasant. And I know my husband feels like that sometimes when he's preaching. He'll say like, this message is heavy, and like, it's just when you have to say something heavy, and it's not like at you, it's just where my life is, it's a little bit heavy. And I was thinking about this, and I thought of that old saying that's like the fake it till you make it. And I'm like, why do we say that to people? Why do we think that that's what we have to do maybe to survive, or I don't know, but I just don't think we should say it anymore. Because what does that benefit us? To basically kind of take what we're going through and push it under the rug and be like, I'm fine, I'm good, I can do this. Like, it's not always where we're at, and it's not always being honest with where we are at. And I could fake it. I could do something super fun, but I don't think that tells you, the listener, that sometimes that's just not where life is. And you don't have to fake it until you make it. I don't think that's advice we should be giving people, if I'm being honest. Because if you had to fake it till you make it, well, when do you make it? That's the place I'm in right now. I haven't made it, so that means I'd have to do a lot of faking. And I don't know about you, but that just seems like it would take an immense amount of energy that I don't personally have. And I just want to dissipate that saying, if you will. I don't know, it just popped in my head this morning, and it really bothered me that people put that on themselves, or that's a burden that they carry, like, I gotta fake it till I make it, or just fake it till you make it. And it's like, no, why do I have to do that? I don't want to do that. That's not living in my authentic life or the authentic reality of the season that I'm in. Because that's what life is. It has seasons. It has hard times. And you're going to fake it every time? I don't know about you, but that just sounds utterly exhausting to me. And so I'm not going to do that. And if you are doing that in your life, I want to release you from that. It's okay. It's okay if you're not making it right now. It's okay. Because, we all have trauma. And maybe you're not in a traumatic season. My husband and I said this like last week, I think it was. He was like, we got a lot of trauma going on. And I was like, we do. But again, what good does it do to just like sweep it under the rug? You got to face it. And here's the thing. I read this line the other day. It's like, you can't bypass it. It's not something that you get to find a route around the hard in life. We've done a podcast on the hard, but I think that's what we like to do. We like to look for strategies of how could I possibly like go around this instead of going through it. And here's the reality. You have to go through it. Whether you like it or not, you have to go through it. And my go through it right now is with my mom's health. I have shared with you about her health, and this has been I think almost a 4-year journey. 4 years she was diagnosed with stage 3, 3 years stage 4 cancer, and then we have gone through the process of almost losing her, and then being able to do a radical surgery to save her life and all of that. And did some podcasts back then as we walked through those waters. But my sister and I got to go see her back in October. And in our line of work, we see a lot of death and cancer and illnesses and stuff like that. And so I think watching my mom, I'm a little bit more aware of the signs of not thriving, if you will. And so that was hard. It was hard to leave knowing that we were probably beginning to head in a direction which was not the direction that we wanted. But, in some ways, we've gained so much extra time that we had no idea we were going to get. And I want to be grateful for that. But you just want it to keep going. Of course, you don't want it to head in a negative direction. You want everything to go in the positive direction. But it's not. I could tell that it wasn't. And here's the interesting thing is sometimes we know something, but we can't quite wrap our brain around it. There's a difference in knowing and something being confirmed. And a few weeks ago, my mom did call me, and she said that the doctors had told her she was failing to thrive. They were giving her about 4 to 6 weeks. She had a partial blockage, which for her, that's death. I mean, it's just, there's no way to put it nicely or to put it in better terms. Blockages for her are an end. And so we were dealing with all of that. And to describe to you how it felt to get that news, I mean, it was very emotional. You know, she said it through tears. I was crying, and also with this like understanding that we know where she's going and that God's got her and that we love each other and all those things. And this has been such a different process for me personally, because when my husband's mom passed away, it was sudden. And so we didn't go through this whole process of, you know, having all this time to have emotions and conversations and kind of this space that you just don't really know what's happening in. It was just kind of, it happened, it was final. And then, you know, you have the funeral, and then you have to begin this existence without someone that you love. And, you know, I was talking to someone at church the other day, and I was like, you know, they were like, well, at least you have time with your mom. And I'm like, both are hard. Whether you lose someone suddenly or you watch something ravage their bodies, both are very hard. And I don't think one is harder than the other. I've experienced both. They're just different, and they're both just plain hard. And might I say, they both suck. There's no, we're real here. There's no, anyone who tells you it doesn't suck, I'm sorry, but they're not being honest. And so, and if you know, you know. I mean, if you've gone through any of this, you know the experience, and you understand that it's hard to really put it into words, like how this affects you. I mean, you think about your, you know, in the conversation, and I think I was holding it together pretty well until my mom said that she wouldn't meet my grandbaby. Still, that gets me, because it's like this new journey from my life, and my mom is not going to see me become a Mimi, unless something miraculous happens, which we're still praying for. But that's just the reality. That's what you're facing. Those are the emotions. And when she said that, you know, I hadn't thought of that till she said it. And that was like where I literally couldn't even hold the phone. Paul had to take over the conversation then, because it was just like, it's just hard. It's just plain hard. And there's no way that you can get around it. You can't get around the hard. Okay, I have to take a little second and wipe my eyes so that I can see the words on my paper, because otherwise they're very blurry right now. All right. And we were kind of posed with this question of quantity over quality. And because my mom had decided that there were a few things that she wanted to do. If you know my mother, you know that when she decides something, she's it's Pam's way. And she had decided some things, and so she had been in palliative care, which basically, if you don't know what that means, which many of you are familiar with this, but it's basically to continue to give her, like, she needed nutrients because she wasn't eating, stuff like that, to kind of keep her going so she could kind of accomplish these things that she had decided that she wanted to do. One of them was she had decided to have a celebration of life before she passed. No doing this after she passed. She was like, we're going to do this before I pass, because she wanted to attend it. She was like, I don't understand why people have these and then you don't even get to be there. Her brother had passed away and we had this beautiful celebration of life. I shared this story with you guys. This was back in the spring of last year. That's weird to say because we're in like 2025, but last year in the spring, and it was a beautiful time, and she was like, okay, I want that, but I want to be there. I want to be a part of it, which I think is genius, honestly. I think it's really cool. I'm like, Mom, you're going to start a new trend. And she was like, I think I am. But another thing that she really wanted to do was to be able to see all of her grandchildren, to tell them in person how much she loved them. And so these two wishes were very important to her. She was kind of like, these are my bucket list. After this, Jesus wants to take me home. If that's what he decides, then that's up to him. But I'm not ready to go until these things are done. And I don't know, all of this was like, you kind of get off the phone and it's just like, all these thoughts are swirling. My sister ended up calling me at like 1 a.m. We talked on the phone through the night because you're just like trying to unpack it. You're trying to wrap your brain around this. Like, what does this mean? You know, because they don't know how long you have, but they're giving you somewhat of a time frame, which some people have been given longer and it's shorter, or they're giving shorter and it's longer. There's just like no manual to how this goes down, which is frustrating in some sense, because it's like, if you knew, then you could know, but you don't know. And so I started to, I don't know, I felt like I was almost, when I think about it, I kind of felt like things were moving kind of like in slow motion, but I was not moving with everything, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, you'll see it in movies, like where the person is standing there and they're still, but everything else continues to move around them, or they're like watching themselves do things, but don't feel connected with themselves in a way. And people were asking me like, how are you? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know how I am. That's a really hard question to ask. And it's so funny because I was just at a funeral home and I said to someone like, how are you? And then I was like, what? This is the stupidest question like ever, Erin. Like, you don't even know how you are. This person's lost their loved one. How do they know how they are? They don't know. You don't know how you are. It's way too many emotions to sift through, or to understand, or to like put in boxes, or to line up in front of you and say, how am I? It's so overwhelming that you have no idea, absolutely no idea how you are. Because 1 minute you can feel like, okay, I know where my mom is going. I have full assurance of that. And then the next minute you're like a mess and you're crying and and you never know when it's going to happen. Why? Why with grief do we not know when it's going to happen? It can happen in the weirdest times when you like least expect it. And then the times that like you think you should be crying. I remember when Paul's mom passed away, he was like, why am I not crying? But then like there'd be other times and he would feel all the emotions. There's no rhyme or reason to it, which is like frustrating in my opinion, because like this would help me. If you could be like, you're going to have a mental breakdown at 1 o'clock. And then I could be like, okay, 1 o'clock. I'm prepared for that. I mean, wouldn't that be helpful? Are you guys agreeing with me? I don't know. But in the midst of one of those moments of I knew I was not doing well, I was reading this book about this character and she was having a mental breakdown. I did not feel like I was having a mental breakdown, but I felt like the emotions she was having, I could completely relate to. And she was in a mental institute, and her pastor comes to see her. And she says to her pastor, she was like, I don't think that I can keep going on. I don't think that I am able to keep holding on to God. And her pastor replied and said, it's not your grip on God. It's his grip on you, especially when you're too tired to cling. And then the pastor prays for her, and she begins to see something which, through our book, Sensible Shoes, we have learned a lot about going into imagination of like when we hear a scripture read or when someone is praying, imagining ourselves a part of it. And so this book is kind of a sequel to Sensible Shoes. It's far off, but it's kind of part of it. And so she begins to see, as her pastor is praying, she begins to see like this treacherous cliff, and like she's trying to climb up the cliff. And she's tired. Her grip isn't going to hold. And then all of a sudden she sees the cliff become this enormous hand. And she's like trying to climb up this hand, and she just cannot make any headway. She just keeps trying to climb. She can't. And all of a sudden she looks down and she sees like this darkness and this abyss that is below her. And just about when she thinks like, I literally cannot hold on 1 second longer, I'm going to fall, the hand goes from being vertical to horizontal. And it becomes like a bowl and a cradle and a nest, and she is caught and she is held. And in that moment, I knew how I was. I was held. That gave me such peace because I didn't have to articulate an emotion or a feeling. I could just be held. I think sometimes when people are going through something, we're so human, right? We want to offer. A friend of mine said to me the other day, she goes, I wish I could say something that was profound to you. And I was like, I don't need that. It's okay. Just your nearness, your presence, your closeness. I don't need that. But I think we feel like uncomfortable with quietness. We feel uncomfortable with not knowing what to say. And sometimes we offer some lackluster advice. I don't know, because in the book, the character was talking about that they thought back to when they had an episode of anxiety and when they felt like they were not able to hold on anymore. And her friend was like, well, that's why it's so important to read your Bible, which you all know I am for 1,000%. But she was saying, like, even when you don't feel like it, you need to read it and you need to build your life on this solid foundation or you're going to be swallowed whole, and you've got to give your mind over to Christ and you've got to work to renew it. And this girl's like, she kept saying all this stuff and it was all true. But in the moment to her, it felt like commanding a quadriplegic to go run a marathon. And I could resonate with that because, my quiet time with God is so important. And yet sometimes I felt so, what do I do? How do I pray? Okay, I know I need to be in my word, but it just feels hard. it feels hard to journal my feelings and like to journal them. Then it almost makes it like more real. So I'd rather just not, because I'd rather live in this space of it not being real. Okay. Too many tears, you guys. All right, I'm going to get my crap together here. Whew. I'm going to wipe off all my makeup. I probably have like mascara running down my face, which is, just look away. Just look away. But, and I'm sharing this because this is where I am. And if you are too, I just said get your stuff together, and I'm not. It's okay. You're not alone. And you need to know that. You need to know that. And if you just feel like you cannot hold on any longer and your grip is loosening, I want you to hear this first, because it just swept over my soul. And I don't know, maybe I've shared this verse before. I don't know, but it's coming alive right now, and we're not going to care. You don't remember what I said 50 podcasts ago anyways. Y'all forget like me. Psalm 37:24. Though he may stumble, he will not fall. For the Lord upholds him with his hand. Uphold. You are supported. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that such good news? I was thinking of an example that Paul often shares at church. And he talks about, when we think we're holding on to God, and it's really God that's holding on to us. And he talks about when any of our kids were little, he would hold their hand and they were thinking they were holding his hand, but really he was holding their hand. And you know how kids kind of like they trip and they have a little spill, but because you're holding on to them, they don't fall. I think so much of life, we think like, I'm holding on to God and I'm grasping him. And the Lord's like, really? You think that's what's happening here? Because I'm pretty sure I'm holding you. Just like a father with his child or a mother with their little one. The kid thinks they're holding on, but they're not. They're not. When I read this passage, I really resonated with it. And I realized I didn't have to be the one to hold on to God. Yes, I believe holding on to him, the fact that I believe he's faithful, he's good, he knows what he's doing, that his thoughts are not my thoughts, his ways are not my ways. I trust him explicitly. All of those things, that's how I hold on. But when I don't feel like I know how to do this, these are difficult waters. I don't see the end in sight yet. I don't know how it's all going to unfold. It's okay because he's got me. He's got you. He's supporting us. And through this journey, we've talked a lot about God winks and how we see God move on our behalf. And not only in that moment did I feel like I was held, but I began to watch as the journey has unfolded. And we're not done with the journey yet. But I've seen him hold on to me as I have stumbled through this process over the last few weeks. I watched God remove the blockage that was a huge obstacle for my mom, this partial blockage, and allowed her to eat a little bit more, have a little bit more strength. And this has enabled us to have more time. And especially for her sisters to fly out and see her, for me and my sister and my husband to fly out and see her, for us all to be there with her together, which was really, really special. And I saw how in the time that I felt so overwhelmed with trying to get to my mom, my friend, Anissa, who is just like a traveler and she just knows how to get it done, and was just like, took it over. Because honestly, I felt so jumbled in my mind to even like look for a flight felt so overwhelming. And she was like on top of it. I think she had to go through a ton of barriers, and she's amazing. But I felt held through her using her gift. God used her to let me know, you're held. It's okay. You can just rest right now. You don't have to figure this out. I got these special moments with my mom. I got to curl her hair for her celebration of life, which was really special. Got to get her dressed and ready, which I don't know. It's just, if you know, you know. It's a very special thing to be able to care for someone that you love so much. I got to be at my mom's funeral with her present. I mean, who gets to do that? It's just an amazing, amazing thing. And we felt so held through that process. And I want to share a little bit about her celebration of life, because it was one of the most amazing things that we've been through. And just in case you want to do one of your own, we keep teasing. We're like, we're just going to all have our celebrations of life now so that it's done, good, wrapped up, good to go. But it was kind of cool because the way they set it up, they would have worship and then they would have a time of sharing. And so my mom has always loved worship. That's where I get it from. And so it was very fitting to have worship time for her part of celebration. And so as soon as the music started, my mom was in her wheelchair, and I just plopped myself next to her and I just leaned into her, and cue waterworks. I mean, my mom had her arm around me. She had her other arm raised. Her voice was broken and yet beautiful at the same time. Just worshiping Jesus. I lost my stuff. You're like, you can't even hold it together right now, Erin. I can only imagine. And it was just, with all the strength she had, she used it to worship her Savior, her King, her Lord. It just was so powerful to witness, to be a part of. I don't know. There's just really not a lot of words for it. It was so sweet because they were singing "Open the Eyes of My Heart, Lord." You know, we're going back. And she's an ad-libber when she sings. And so I love it because I like to ad-lib too and just add my own little things in there. And she just was like, you know, I want to see you. And she would say, I can't wait to see you, Jesus, because you are holy, holy, holy. And if I thought that was special enough, they started to play the song As the Deer Panteth for the Water, also going way back. And that is a song that we grew up singing. And so I called my sister over and she sat on one side of my mom, and we had the OG Bryan girls with their 3-part harmony going. And it was just so, so special. It will be imprinted on my mind for the rest of my life, to worship as a family unit, something that we did my entire life growing up, the three of us singing our 3-part harmony. And my sister reminded me that when we were kids, we used to clean a doctor's office. I think it was a dentist's office. And we would take all the money we made from that, and that's how we would support missions with it, which is so funny because we didn't have heat in our car, but my mom has always loved missions, and she was like, I'm supporting missions. So we cleaned a doctor, because we didn't have extra money to give to missions, but we could clean a doctor's office in the middle of the night, and we would worship the whole time we were cleaning and sing our little songs and stuff like that. So, and it was funny because when she said it, then it totally, like, the memory came back. I remember, I think my job was emptying the waste paper baskets. I don't know how much I could do, but apparently I could do that. To even explain to you that moment is just like, I have no words, but it will live. Like I said, it's in my mind, I feel like it's one of the most extravagant gifts God has ever given me. Like, it blew my mind away. My sister and I both said if we would have flown there, experienced that, that was more than we could have ever have asked. I mean, it was such a gift from the Lord. And just we knew we were so held in that moment. And it was amazing because we heard people speak about how they had met our mom and their time with her, how she had shown them a very motherly love and had walked with them through very hard things in their lives, shepherded them, encouraged them in their faith, brought them to Jesus, some of them. And it was just like, amazing. We watched this young girl. I just asked my mom about her the other day. Crawl up into my mom's lap. Like, she wanted to, but my mom is just incredibly frail. And my mom was like, I don't care. And she was like, she just needed to know she was loved. And so my mom patted her lap and I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to break my mom. And no, she crawled right up in my mom's lap and just bawled her little eyes out. And my mom just spoke words of encouragement and life into her ear and how much she was loved and cared for. And even when my mom's not going to be there, that God loves her. And people lined up to talk to her. They would tell us their stories as they were in line. And they didn't just walk up to my mom and give like this little hug and then move on. They like sat down with her and she was intentional. She gave every ounce of her strength to the people around her. It was not about conserving for anything for herself. It was the most selfless thing I've ever seen played out in front of my eyes of just like, I'm going to give it and I'm going to give it all. And what a gift it was to see how many people loved her, how many people she loves, how many people she has impacted. It completely wore her out. That night was rough, which was very hard. And the next day we kind of had to prepare ourselves to say goodbye. Which she had plans to come to Michigan, but we knew the possibility of that not happening. And so we wanted to make it intentional. And it was really sweet because my mom asked me to brush her hair. And I didn't know my mom liked her hair brushed. And she was like, I love my hair brushed. And I'm like, I do too, Mom. And I said, but, sometimes when Paul brushes my hair, he brushes the same spot like 20 times. Sorry, babe. I love you. And she started laughing. I was like, you just tell me if I annoy you. Just say, move, Erin. And so for like 10 minutes, I brushed her hair. And that was just, I don't know. It was really special. Something that curling her hair is different than brushing her hair. It was just very intimate. And I was so close to her. And it was just super special. And then she got super tired. And so we went and had a cup of tea. And then we knew like we were going to have to say goodbye. And there was this chapel. And so we went in there and there was a grand piano and I was so excited, you guys. So excited. It wasn't a real one. It was one of those keyboard ones. Not the same. But I'm not complaining, Lord. You gave me the moment. But I would have really liked a real one. Anyways, so I just sat down and started playing things that I have memorized and just started worshiping, and my sister was singing, and it was like the Lord's preparation of my heart, knowing I needed that time of worship to go in and go say goodbye to our mom. And I felt so held as I worshiped him. And I felt so held when I went into kiss my mom for the last time, more than likely. Held as I caressed her hand. Held as I had to walk out and leave and say goodbye. Held knowing that this was probably our last in-person moment that we would have, and just so held. I felt so held and so supported by the Lord in that moment. That's the only way that I can describe it. I know that I was not holding on to him. I know that I was fully held by Jesus himself. And, my mom didn't make it to Michigan, and it was a relief in many ways, but hard in some other ways. And, we're in this space of still not knowing where we're at, where things are going. Well, we know where things are going, but it's just this waiting space, and it's still really hard. I'm not gonna lie, because again, it feels like everything is feel like you're stopped inside, but life is continuing to move on, and that's what happens. But it's just again, a very weird space. But I can say I continue to see him hold me. Last Sunday was very hard for me with worship. Was potential snowstorm, and I was like, cancel. We should cancel. And I got honest with Paul. I was like, listen, I don't know if I can lead worship. First of all, worship has just been used as some very intimate time with me and my mom, and just me and Jesus. And if I'm being honest, I don't want to share that space with other people. I just don't feel ready to do that. And I was honest about it. And I just didn't know if I could lead people into that space. And that's just being honest. But my husband said I had to, and I thought it might look weird if he was at church and I wasn't. It's like we could both make it to church. But then I was a little stubborn. I was like, well, I'm going to tell people that this is hard because I'm just very honest. But I was remembered of a passage in this book that I'm reading. When I say read this book, Sensible Shoes, I'm saying read this book. And it says, I can't, but he can. See, that's when you know you're held, is when you come into this space and you're like, I can't. But, I love a good but too, guys. But he can. You are supported. You are held. You don't have to know how you are. If you're in a space of life and you're like, I don't know how I am, it's okay. Just allow him to hold you. Maybe you're not in the same space that I am of losing a loved one, losing my mother. That's not the space you're in, but you do feel like you're in this space where you're in this precarious place of trying to hold on with all of your might, and you feel your grip loosening, and you feel like you look down and you see this abyss, and you're like, I'm gonna fall into that. I'm not sure that I can make it, and you're afraid that any second you're gonna release your grip. You can't hold on any longer. You're in that space. And first of all, I want you to know again, you're not alone. You're not. And secondly, it's okay to let go. I'm giving you permission to let go, because I can tell you with full confidence that he will uphold you. He will support you. You're not going to fall. And in your I can'ts, it's okay to say I can't. You don't have to fake it till you make it, my friend. Just be honest. I can't. And allow him to say, I can. He can. And maybe all you can do is say help. Or maybe you're like, I don't even think I got that. And I read this verse and I was like, okay, we don't even have to say help, because it says in Psalm 120 verse 1, in my distress, I cried unto the Lord and he heard me. You're just in distress. You're in trauma. You're like, I'm losing my grip. I don't know how I am. I don't know what's going on. Okay. I cried unto the Lord. Just give a little bit. A little bit. Just a little noise. Maybe it's your heart. Maybe nothing's coming out of your mouth and it's just your heart that's crying out to him. And he says, he heard me. He hears you. He knows you. He sees you. He hears you. And he holds you. Walk in that confidently. He holds you. I love you, friends. Thank you for putting up with all my crying. And God is good all the time.